The Christmas that changed everything. At 42, they called me a waste of space while carving the turkey. 3 days later, my voicemail was flooded with their desperate pleas. What my late father left hidden in his garage safe would expose 20 years of lies and teach me that sometimes the greatest gift you can give family is letting them face the truth. I never imagined I'd be sharing this story, but after what unfolded during our family Christmas celebration, I'm still trying to process the magnitude of what I discovered. You know that suffocating moment when you step into a room and every conversation dies instantly? That's precisely how my Christmas morning began. I arrived at my mother's house at exactly 11:30, the time she'd specifically requested, only to find everyone else had been there since dawn. The living room buzzed with the aftermath of gift exchanges. Breakfast plates cluttered the kitchen counters, and my brother Michael's son Tyler was already immersed in his new gaming console. The first warning sign should have been their decision not to wait, despite Mom's explicit instruction about my arrival time. This marked our first Christmas without Dad, who'd passed away in September, and the entire atmosphere felt fundamentally wrong. Mom embraced me warmly, but something hollow lingered behind her smile. My sister-in-law Amanda barely glanced up from her iPhone, merely muttering, "Oh, you finally showed up," as if I were some unwelcome guest who'd crashed their intimate gathering. I placed my carefully wrapped gifts beside the tree, desperately trying to ignore the palpable tension. Tyler, bless his innocent heart, actually seemed genuinely excited to see me, bouncing over to demonstrate his new gaming setup. That kid has always been the one bright spot in these family gatherings. But then Michael interrupted sharply. "Don't waste Uncle Robert's time, Tyler. He probably doesn't understand these modern things anyway, too busy with his whatever lifestyle he's living." The insult wasn't subtle at all. I've built a successful career working remotely for a software development company while traveling extensively. Dad had always championed my unconventional choices, even when they didn't align with the traditional path Michael had chosen. But since Dad's passing, the cutting remarks about my lifestyle had become increasingly frequent and pointed, like calculated attacks designed to weaken my resolve. The situation truly deteriorated during lunch. Mom had prepared Dad's legendary Christmas prime rib, the first time she'd attempted it since his death, and everyone sat in uncomfortable silence until Amanda decided to shatter the quiet. "So Robert, any romantic developments in your life lately? You know, at your age, you really should be considering settling down. Tyler needs cousins closer to his age." Before I could formulate a response, Michael jumped in with practiced cruelty. "Oh, he's too consumed with living the bachelor fantasy. No wife, no children, no real life, right?" He laughed, but the sound carried a sharp edge that made my stomach clench. The way everyone else at the table either nodded in agreement or studied their plates told me this conversation had already taken place multiple times behind my back. I maintained my composure, focusing intently on cutting my food. My life feels pretty complete, actually. I'm content with the choices I've made. But Amanda wasn't finished dissecting my existence. "Complete with what exactly?" she pressed, setting down her fork with deliberate precision. "Working endless hours behind a computer screen, sleeping in anonymous hotel rooms across the country. That's not living, Robert. That's merely existing. You're squandering your potential, and your father would have wanted. Don't." The word escaped sharper than I'd intended, cutting through the dining room like a blade. "Don't you dare tell me what Dad would have wanted." The tension became so thick you could have carved it with the carving knife. Mom desperately tried redirecting the conversation toward New Year's plans, but Michael wasn't finished delivering his verdict. "You know what? No, we absolutely need to address this elephant in the room. The will reading is scheduled for next week, and we need to have a realistic conversation here." He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if sharing some profound revelation. "You've accumulated all this money and savings with zero real responsibilities, while we're struggling to provide Tyler with the best possible future. It's fundamentally unfair." Unfair. That single word hit me like a physical blow. Then I noticed Mom's expression, guilt written across every line of her face. She couldn't meet my eyes directly. "What exactly do you mean by realistic conversation?" I asked, though the pieces were already assembling themselves in my mind like a horrific puzzle. Amanda jumped in, her voice sickeningly sweet with false concern. "We've encountered some unexpected expenses recently. Tyler's private academy, the home renovations Dad had promised to help fund before everything changed. We had to borrow against what we knew would eventually come from the inheritance settlement. My stomach plummeted into free fall. Borrow from where exactly? The silence that followed felt like it lasted an eternity. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice barely audible above the ticking of Dad's old grandfather clock. Your portion, sweetheart. They desperately needed the funds, and you have so much saved already. They have a family to consider, real responsibilities to manage. I felt as though someone had driven a fist straight through my chest. You took money from my inheritance without even asking me? Without any discussion. Borrowed. Michael corrected with the audacity of someone who genuinely believed semantics could erase theft. And honestly, what were you planning to do with it anyway? You're essentially a waste of space in this family structure. No genuine connections. No one depending on your support, just drifting through life while the rest of us handle actual adult responsibilities. Everyone nodded in agreement, even Mom, though she looked physically pained while doing it. The only person who appeared uncomfortable was Tyler, who had stopped eating entirely and was staring at his untouched mashed potatoes. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the house. The room fell silent again, probably expecting me to explode into a rage-filled confrontation. Instead, I smiled with genuine calm. Thank you for lunch, Mom. I think it's time for me to leave. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Amanda started, but I was already walking toward the front door. Behind me, I could hear Michael saying something about me always running away from real confrontation, always avoiding difficult conversations like the perpetual child I'd apparently remained. I drove home through the December afternoon in complete silence, my mind simultaneously racing and completely numb. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was already illuminating with incoming messages. Most came from Mom, pleading that we needed to discuss everything as a family unit. One particularly memorable text from Michael instructed me to man up and face reality for once in your life. I didn't respond to any of them immediately. Instead, I called Dad's attorney and left a detailed message. Tomorrow morning, I would discover exactly what they had done with my inheritance and what they meant by this mysterious borrowing arrangement. The worst part of everything wasn't even the money itself. I kept replaying Dad's final conversation with me, just 1 week before he passed away. He'd made me promise two things: take care of the family, but also stand my ground when it mattered. At the time, I'd assumed he was just rambling from the heavy medication. Now I'm beginning to wonder if he somehow knew exactly what was coming, if he'd sensed the storm that would follow his departure. I don't know what my next steps will be yet, but I know with absolute certainty that I cannot let this violation stand. Not just because of the money, but because of everything it represents about how they view me, how they've always viewed me. They want to discuss real life and adult responsibilities? Fine. Let's have that conversation properly. My phone continued buzzing throughout the evening. I think I'll let it ring for a while longer while I plan my response. 2 days later, thank you all for the overwhelming support on my previous post. The developments over the past 48 hours have been staggering, and honestly, I'm still struggling to process the full scope of what I've uncovered. What I discovered reaches far deeper than I could have imagined, revealing a web of deception that spans years. Yesterday morning, I met with Dad's attorney, Mr. Patterson. His lack of surprise at seeing me was my first indication that something significant was waiting to be revealed. I've been expecting your call, he said, pulling out an impressively thick folder. Your father left very specific instructions regarding this exact situation. It turns out Dad knew everything. He knew it all. The meeting began with Mr. Patterson showing me a series of loan documents, each bearing my forged signature. My name had been fraudulently used on at least 8 different papers over the past 18 months. Each document had authorized withdrawals from my portion of the inheritance, which Dad had apparently structured as a protected trust. The total amount stolen reached just over $420,000. Looking at those signatures made me physically ill. They weren't even skillful forgeries, but there they were, officially documented and processed. But here's where the story becomes truly fascinating. Mr. Patterson pulled out another document, Dad's revised will, dated just 10 days before his death. Your father amended this after a deeply troubling conversation with your brother, he explained. Then he showed me the banking statements that revealed the full picture. Michael and Amanda are completely bankrupt, not just struggling financially, but drowning in an ocean of debt. The prestigious private academy they constantly brag about. They haven't paid tuition in over 6 months. Their elaborate home renovation project, entirely funded through credit cards and predatory loans. They've been living dramatically beyond their means for years, using Dad's declining health as leverage to manipulate and steal money. While Mr. Patterson was explaining these revelations, my phone continued its relentless buzzing. I finally checked during a brief break in our meeting. 43 missed calls, 22 voicemails, and dozens of increasingly frantic text messages. Some particularly memorable excerpts include Michael texting, "You're being completely selfish here. Tyler's entire future is hanging in the balance," and Amanda writing, "Your father would be absolutely ashamed of how you're behaving right now." But the most surprising message came from Tyler himself. "Uncle Robert, I'm really sorry about what happened at Christmas. Dad and Mom were wrong to say those horrible things to you." That text hit me harder than all the others combined. The kid is only 13 years old, but he seems to understand more about right and wrong than his parents ever will. Mr. Patterson then revealed Dad's masterstroke, the element that transformed this from simple theft into something approaching poetic justice. The amended will contains very specific conditions. Any money taken through unauthorized loans must be fully repaid before anyone can access their complete inheritance. And here's the truly brilliant part. Dad appointed me as the overseer of the entire repayment plan. "Your father was extraordinarily clear about this decision," Mr. Patterson said, showing me Dad's handwritten letter. He wrote, "Robert understands the true value of money and responsibility better than anyone gives him credit for. He'll make the right choices when the time comes." Just as we were concluding our meeting, Mr. Patterson delivered one final bombshell that left me speechless. "There's something else you should know," he said, pulling out one last document. "Your brother approached me last month attempting to have you declared financially incompetent. He wanted complete control over your entire portion of the inheritance." That revelation explained everything. The recent escalation in comments about my lifestyle and travel habits weren't just family criticism. They were building a legal case against my mental competency. They'd been systematically undermining my reputation to steal everything I was meant to inherit. As I left the office, another voicemail arrived, this time from Amanda, her voice shaking with barely controlled panic. "We desperately need to talk. There are things you don't understand about our situation. The academy is threatening to expel Tyler if we don't pay by next Friday. Please, we can work out some kind of arrangement." I sat in my car for a long time, rereading Dad's letter repeatedly. Near the end, he'd written, "Son, they'll try to manipulate you with guilt. They'll call you selfish and heartless. Remember, real responsibility isn't about giving in to emotional manipulation. It's about making difficult choices for the right reasons, even when those choices hurt." The next paragraph stopped me cold. "Check the garage at the old house, bottom shelf behind the paint cans. I left something there you'll need when this moment arrives." I drove to Dad's house, well, Mom's house now, grateful that no one was home. The garage remained exactly as Dad had left it, his tools still arranged with military precision. Behind the paint cans, I found a small fireproof safe. The combination was my birthday. Inside was another letter, several USB drives, and a meticulously detailed ledger documenting every single loan Michael had taken over the years, not just from my inheritance, but from Dad personally. The amounts were absolutely staggering, revealing a pattern of financial manipulation that stretched back over a decade. The letter began, "If you're reading this, they've finally pushed too far. Here's everything you need to protect yourself and hopefully help them learn some hard lessons about consequences." My phone buzzed again with a text from Mom. "They're coming over tomorrow morning for a family meeting. Please come. We need to resolve this as a family unit." I looked at the safe's contents spread across my kitchen table, then at Dad's letter. The final line read, "Sometimes love means standing firm when everyone else wants you to bend. You're stronger than they think you are, and you're definitely stronger than they hope you are. Tomorrow's meeting should prove very interesting indeed. I've made copies of everything and sent them to Mr. Patterson for safekeeping. I'm finished being the family doormat, but I'm also not seeking revenge for its own sake. Dad trusted me to handle this situation correctly, and that's exactly what I intend to do." The most recent text message is from Tyler. "Are you coming tomorrow? I really hope you do. Someone needs to tell them the truth finally. Out of all the desperate messages I've received, that's the one I'm choosing to focus on. I'll update again after tomorrow's confrontation." Something tells me it's going to be a complete turning point for everyone involved in this family drama. 3 days later, I should have known something was orchestrated when I arrived at Mom's house this morning and saw 5 additional cars crowding the driveway. Michael hadn't just brought Amanda for backup, he'd assembled what looked like a complete intervention team. Our Aunt Susan, Uncle Peter, and their family friend who works as a financial advisor were all seated in the living room like some kind of tribunal waiting to render judgment. The first words out of Michael's mouth established the tone for everything that followed. Good, you're finally here. Now we can discuss how to fix the disaster you're creating for this family. I almost laughed out loud. Really? This was their strategic approach? Mom hovered nervously in the kitchen doorway, already clutching tissues like she was preparing for battle. Amanda sat perfectly composed on the couch, her makeup applied as if she were heading to a business presentation rather than a family confrontation. Tyler was conspicuously absent, probably sent to a friend's house to avoid witnessing the carnage they were planning. I settled into Dad's old recliner by the window, something about occupying his spot giving me strength and clarity. I didn't say anything initially, just waited patiently. Michael has always despised silence because it makes him nervous and forces him to fill the void with increasingly desperate words. Sure enough, he started rambling to break the uncomfortable quiet. We've been having extensive discussions. He gestured broadly to encompass the entire room, and we believe you're not seeing the bigger picture here. Dad's will is causing unnecessary strain on family relationships. We have a comprehensive proposal to present. Their financial advisor friend pulled out some official-looking papers, and that's when I noticed the company logo. It was from the same firm that manages the mortgage on Mom's house. How very interesting and convenient. The proposal was exactly what any reasonable person would expect. They wanted to completely restructure the inheritance distribution, essentially giving them immediate access to their full portions plus temporary control of my share to help manage family assets more efficiently. In return, they'd establish a repayment plan for the stolen money, beginning in 5 years with no interest or penalties. I let them finish their entire presentation, nodding occasionally as if I were seriously considering their audacious proposal. Then I pulled out Dad's meticulously detailed ledger. Before we proceed any further, I said calmly, let's discuss the Riverside Gardens property situation. The room fell silent so abruptly you could hear the grandfather clock ticking from the hallway. Aunt Susan suddenly found her coffee cup absolutely fascinating, studying it like it contained the secrets of the universe. For those wondering, Riverside Gardens was Dad's rental property, 4 units completely paid off, generating steady monthly income. He'd left it to Mom in the will, at least that's what everyone had been told and believed. The Riverside Gardens property isn't relevant to this discussion, Michael said quickly, too quickly, his voice betraying his panic. I opened the ledger to a page I'd marked with a yellow sticky note. Really? Because according to this detailed documentation, you took out a second mortgage on that property 9 months ago, using Mom's power of attorney while Dad was hospitalized. Did you bother informing her about that significant decision? Mom's tissue fell from her trembling fingers to the floor. What is he talking about, Michael? It was a temporary measure. Amanda jumped in desperately, her composure finally cracking. We needed capital for a promising investment opportunity. Everything is under complete control. Under control. I turned to their financial advisor friend. Is that why the property is currently in pre-foreclosure proceedings? That's when Mom began crying. Not gentle tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs that made everyone in the room flinch with discomfort. Those units. Your father and I bought those when we first got married. They were supposed to be our retirement security. Michael shot me a look of pure, undiluted hatred. You had no right to go digging into private family business matters. Private. Like forging my signature on loans, or like the 3 credit cards you opened in Mom's name without her knowledge. The silence stretched longer this time. The financial advisor began gathering his papers, clearly wanting to escape this increasingly toxic situation. That's completely different. Michael's voice carried an edge of true desperation now. We were protecting the family's financial interests. You've never understood what that kind of responsibility actually means. You just travel around with zero obligations while we're trying to build something meaningful. Like losing $600,000 in online trading, I said quietly. Using borrowed money against every asset you could access, maxing out Tyler's college fund. Amanda stood up suddenly, her carefully maintained facade finally shattering completely. You sanctimonious, self-righteous. She caught herself before finishing the insult. You think you're so morally superior. At least we're trying to build something substantial. What do you have? Empty apartments in different cities. Instagram photos of places nobody cares about. I have zero debt, I replied calmly. And I have Dad's complete trust and confidence. That's when a small voice came from the staircase. Is it true about my college fund being gone? Everyone turned to see Tyler sitting on the middle step, clutching his smartphone. He must have been listening to the entire confrontation from the beginning. Sweetheart, go to your room immediately, Amanda started, but Tyler cut her off with surprising firmness. I recorded everything, he said, his young voice shaking with emotion. From the very beginning. Uncle Robert wasn't lying about them stealing, was he? The next several minutes devolved into complete chaos. Amanda crying hysterically, Michael shouting accusations, Mom still sobbing about Riverside Gardens. Aunt Susan and Uncle Peter slipped out during the confusion like rats abandoning a sinking ship. The financial advisor handed me his business card before leaving, and I learned later that he'd been trying to warn the family about Michael's financial schemes for months. Tyler came and sat beside me in the midst of all the screaming and crying, quietly taking the armrest of Dad's chair. It was such a small gesture, but it felt monumentally significant in that moment of family destruction. Finally, when everyone had exhausted themselves with shouting, I pulled out the final document, Dad's amended will with its specific repayment conditions. Here's exactly what's going to happen, I announced. Riverside Gardens goes into immediate professional trust management to prevent the foreclosure. All credit cards opened in Mom's name are canceled effective immediately. Tyler's remaining college fund is frozen in a new account that only he can access when he turns 18. And you too. I looked directly at Michael and Amanda. Start mandatory financial counseling next week, or I take this folder of forged documents directly to the police. Or what? Michael spat, his face flushed with rage and humiliation. Or I file criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse, I replied matter-of-factly. More silence filled the room. Mom finally spoke, her voice hoarse from crying. The rental units, can they actually be saved? Yes, I assured her gently. Dad left enough in the estate to cover everything, but Michael and Amanda have to agree to every single condition I've outlined. I passed out copies of the repayment plan as they read with growing horror. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Patterson. Your father would be incredibly proud. Meeting tomorrow to finalize all legal documents. Before anyone could launch into new arguments, Tyler spoke up again. Dad, just sign it please. I don't want to show everyone at school what you really did. Michael's face went pale, thinking about his son's recording and the social destruction it could cause. Amanda signed first, her hand shaking with either rage or shame, probably both. Michael followed reluctantly, his signature barely legible. As I drove home through the winter evening, the messages started flooding in immediately. Threats from Michael, tearful apologies from Mom, and a long text from Tyler asking if he could come stay with me for a few days until the family situation calmed down. Tomorrow we meet with Mr. Patterson to make everything legally binding and official. But something deep in my gut tells me this confrontation isn't truly over. Michael's pride is too damaged, Amanda is too desperate, and there are 20 years of twisted family dynamics to untangle completely. At least now everyone knows the truth, even if they desperately didn't want to hear it. 1 month later, it's been 4 weeks since my last update, and I've been waiting to share this until every legal document was finalized and every consequence had fully played out. What happened wasn't just a resolution, it was a complete dismantling of my brother's carefully constructed house of lies. Some might call it karma, but I prefer to think of it as justice finally finding its way home. The morning after our family confrontation, Michael made his most catastrophic mistake. He attempted to empty Mom's bank accounts, all of them, every single accessible penny. What he didn't realize was that I'd already frozen everything the night before, working with Mr. Patterson to protect Mom's remaining assets. His attempted theft triggered exactly what I'd hoped for, an automatic fraud alert and an immediate criminal investigation. Here's where Dad's incredible foresight truly shines like a beacon. Those USB drives he'd hidden in the garage safe contained years of recorded conversations, digital evidence that Dad had been systematically documenting for longer than any of us realized. Every loan request, every manipulation, every lie told to extract money from our parents. The final recording was from his hospital bed just days before he passed, with Michael desperately trying to get him to sign over complete power of attorney while heavily medicated. Mr. Patterson helped me execute Dad's plan with surgical precision. First, we submitted all evidence of the forged signatures to the relevant authorities. Then we exposed the credit card fraud perpetrated against Mom. The look on Michael's face when investigators showed up at his office was apparently priceless, according to his colleague who sent me the security footage. Amanda tried her own damage control strategy, calling everyone in their social circle with elaborate tales of how I was systematically destroying the family out of pure spite. But remember that financial advisor from our family meeting? Turns out he'd been keeping meticulous records of their financial schemes and had been trying to warn people for months. When he presented evidence that they'd been running a small investment scam within their social circle, their friends turned on them faster than sharks detecting blood in the water. The private academy situation resolved itself in the most ironic way imaginable. Tyler, my brave and brilliant nephew, had forwarded all his recordings to the school administration. Not only did they grant him emergency financial aid to continue his education, but they also opened an investigation into the donations Michael and Amanda had been claiming on their tax returns. Spoiler alert, those charitable donations never actually existed. Mom finally witnessed their true character when Michael, in complete desperation, tried to pin everything on her. He claimed she had authorized all the loans and credit card applications, essentially trying to make her the scapegoat for his criminal behavior. That's when I played my ultimate trump card. Dad's final video message, recorded just 1 week before he passed away, detailing exactly how Michael had manipulated and stolen from both our parents for years. The Riverside Gardens property was saved and completely restructured. Mom's retirement is now secure. Tyler's college fund was not only recovered but actually tripled, thanks to Dad's secret investment account that Michael never knew existed. The best part? It had been specifically earmarked for Tyler since the day he was born. But the real satisfaction came from an unexpected source. Remember Aunt Susan, who sat silently during our family intervention? She finally came clean about why she'd been protecting Michael for so long. He'd been blackmailing her with manufactured evidence of tax fraud. When we exposed that lie completely, she provided years of emails showing how Michael had systematically manipulated and exploited every family member who'd ever tried to help him. The dominoes fell with beautiful precision. Michael's firm suspended him pending their internal investigation. Their country club membership was revoked when it was discovered they'd been charging thousands of dollars to other members' accounts without permission. Their dream house is in foreclosure proceedings. Their entire social circle has completely ostracized them. 3 of their former friends have filed civil lawsuits over the investment scam. Amanda's final attempt at redemption backfired more spectacularly than anyone could have imagined. She actually tried to hold a press conference, yes, you read that correctly, to paint herself as a victim of circumstances beyond her control. That's when Tyler, my absolutely brilliant nephew, released the group chat screenshots showing her actively planning to exploit additional family members for money. They're moving out of their house next week, downsizing to a small apartment across town. Tyler chose to stay with me temporarily, with full legal backing thanks to Mr. Patterson's connections. The court was particularly interested in the recording of Michael threatening to make Tyler pay for exposing their family business. Mom is doing remarkably better now. Yesterday, she helped me sort through Dad's old study and found a letter he'd written to me years ago that I'd never seen. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the complete consequences of their actions, it said. Rock bottom has a way of building foundations for genuinely better things. The family dynamics have shifted permanently and irreversibly. Most relatives have completely cut ties with Michael and Amanda. Those who haven't are keeping a very cautious distance. Mom hosts small Sunday dinners now, quieter and more peaceful affairs without the constant cloud of manipulation and financial desperation hanging over everything. The real victory has been Tyler's transformation. Free from his parents' toxic influence, he's absolutely thriving. His grades have improved dramatically. He's making genuine friends, and yesterday he told me he wants to study finance in college to help people, not hurt them like my parents did. As for me, I've purchased the Riverside Gardens property from Mom at full market value. Everything completely legitimate and properly documented. I'm converting it into affordable housing units with a strict policy against ever allowing Michael or Amanda to rent there. Petty? Perhaps. Satisfying? Absolutely. Dad's final message keeps echoing in my mind. Son, sometimes love means watching someone lose everything they stole so they can hopefully find something real to build their life on. Michael and Amanda are facing multiple criminal investigations, civil lawsuits, and complete social isolation. Their house of cards didn't just collapse, it burned to the ground, and I made sure to document every moment of its destruction. The family assumes I'm finished with my response. They're completely wrong. I've established a trust fund for Tyler that Michael and Amanda can never access, even after he turns 18. Every penny they stole will be repaid with interest through wage garnishment if necessary. Their reputation in this town is permanently destroyed, not through rumors or gossip, but through the simple exposure of their own documented actions. Sometimes the most effective revenge isn't just watching someone fall from grace. It's making absolutely certain they can never rebuild the same facade of respectability again. Tyler is staying with me through the remainder of the school year. Last night, he asked if we could frame Dad's final letter in his new room to remind me, he said, that doing the right thing always matters more than looking right to other people. It seems like Dad's legacy will live on after all, just not through the son everyone expected him to choose.